I never played Blacksite Area 51 back in the day, but I do have a very vivid memory of my older brother playing this game. Only one memory, him fighting off aliens on a helicopter landing pad. That's it. But for some reason in my mind, I remember the aliens as the octopus flying aliens in Crysis 1 instead of the actual aliens in this game. Don't know why I remembered that. Point being, I always had interest in this game, but just never really got around to playing it. It's piqued my curiosity enough, so in this video we're going to be analyzing Blacksite Area 51. Hey everyone, Jarek the Gaming Dragon here. If you're already subscribed and you haven't clicked that bell, be sure to do that, otherwise YouTube won't tell you that I posted anything. If you haven't subscribed, well, watch this video and maybe consider subscribing if you like it. Okay, the most common question I got while I was streaming this game is this game related to Area 51, the 2005 first-person shooter? And the answer is kind of, but not really. This game was developed by Midway Austin and published by Midway Games. Area 51, the 2005 first-person shooter, was also developed by Midway Austin and published by Midway Games. But Blacksite Area 51 is a spiritual sequel at best. It actually has nothing to do with that game. As a side note, if you know about Midway Games, you know they went out of business. This was sad to me because I played a lot of their games back in the day. I mean, they made the original Mortal Kombat and NBA Jam. I put so much time in NBA Jam as a kid. But this also means that Blacksite Area 51 is completely abandonware. Midway Austin and Midway Games as a publisher are both gone. Blacksite Area 51 was never sold digitally, so if you want to legally obtain this game, the only way you can do it is to buy it used online from someone that still has a copy. This is easier for consoles because you can just go to your local GameStop or whatever and buy it for super cheap, but from what I know, the console versions are really bad of this game. They have terrible frame rate issues and stutter all the time. The PC versions, however, are not as easy to come across. I did find a few online for like $30, which no thanks, that's not worth it, and finding it digitally is a complete pain. It took me around a week to actually obtain this game. Keep in mind that this is abandonware, so if you're buying it legally, you're still buying it used, and really you're just buying a copy someone else already bought. You're just giving them money. There's no way to give money to the original developers or original publishers. With that in mind, I went online to try to find a download for it anywhere. All the torrents have absolutely no seeder, so that was not an option. That means I had to go to one of those websites where it's a 50-50 whether you actually get the game or malware, and you have to download it in numerous parts. Okay, it's more like a 90-10% chance that you end up getting malware, with the 90% being malware. So getting this game was pretty difficult. I eventually did finally find a working copy off one of these websites that didn't give me malware. I got that going for me, I guess. I have obtained a game that is apparently terrible. I will say almost every video I've come across says this game is horrible and is a big flop and is one of the worst games they've ever played, but I've played way worse than this game. It's not great, but it's not really that bad. I think there's a lot of reasons why this game got horrible review scores, and I'll talk more about that later. This game released in late 2007, and honestly for a late 2007 game, it doesn't look that bad. 2007 was an incredibly stacked year. It saw the launches of BioShock, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, the original Crysis, the Orange Box, Halo 3, The Darkness, Time Shift. There were so many games this year. But speaking purely graphically, yeah, this year saw the release of Crysis, but that's Crysis. Nothing looked that good at the time. And for many years later, nothing looked that good. Compared to these other games, it actually looks pretty decent. The PC version installs and plays as it should. It has a few quirks, but I've definitely used worse. For example, if you try to turn on anti-aliasing, nothing happens. And when I say nothing happens, I don't mean you can turn it on in the menu and it doesn't seem to do anything. I mean, you literally can't change it. It just stays off. This isn't a big deal, you can just turn this on in your NVIDIA control panel and it still works. It's just a little bit weird. Similar thing can be said with VSync. There's not an option in game, so if you want to turn that on, just turn it on in your NVIDIA control panel and you're good to go. Default FOV is pretty narrow at 75, but the workaround is pretty easy. You just replace an old INI file with a new one and then you have the FOV you want. The FOV you're seeing in this video is 95 and it doesn't seem to break any of the animation, so it's a little weird that it doesn't have an FOV slider. The last thing I can say is that this game went overboard with its post-processing effects. Tons of motion blur, a good amount of bloom, and a lot of color correction. This can be disabled by deleting a certain file, but unfortunately you can't disable certain things. If you disable it, you just get rid of all of it. The bloom wasn't overbearing, so I would have liked to keep that, but the motion blur and the color correction was really overbearing. I didn't turn any of it off for the sake of this video, but I can show you the differences between before and after if you do this. Personally, if I was playing this just by myself without making a video, I definitely would have turned it off. I can't really complain too much though. The only workaround I had to do was just replacing an INI file for the FOV, and that was it. Story-wise, I can complain though. This is a very generic story and it's not executed well at all. You play as Captain Pierce. You're sent into Iraq in 2003 looking for supposed weapons in a bunker. Instead of supposed weapons, you end up finding mutants, and you lose one of your teammates, Summers, this way. 3 years later, a heavily armed militia is taking control of Area 51 and the surrounding area. This happens alongside an outbreak of alien creatures identical to those you found in Iraq. The militia are actually cybernetically enhanced US soldiers known as Reborn. You can see where this is going. These were people that were either MIA or homeless, people that wouldn't have families or wouldn't know they were gone, and then did experiments on. Summers is one of these people, and he comes back controlling this entire militia. His goal is to spread these alien spores and infect the Earth. Well, eventually you kill him, and then the game just abruptly ends. That's literally the too long didn't read of the story. There's nothing really more I can add to this, and it's not particularly compelling. Thankfully for me, I don't play a first-person shooter for the story, I play it for the shooty bits. So how are the shooty bits? Well, honestly, they're not that bad. This was during the time that everything wanted to be a modern military shooter, and I have sort of a guilty pleasure for these games. Not the single-player Michael Bay constant explosions, run or you'll die type of games like, say, the Call of Duty campaigns, but just the whole modern military feel in general. I like depictions of real weapons in video games, and the closer you get to real weapons in games, the more I'm going to like your game. Blacksite Area 51 definitely tries to go for this feeling, but unlike the other modern military shooters that are constantly in your face forcing you to go, this one lets you go at your own pace, and that's a big thing for me. It almost feels like if Half-Life tried to be a modern military shooter, except nowhere near as good. The shooting itself feels fine, ADSing is exactly as you would expect it to be, the guns have a good amount of recoil, not really that much, but I mean it's there. The guns sound fine, the reloading animations are smooth, albeit some of them are a little perplexing. I mean, this game at its core does everything you should expect the game to do. You can point, you can click, you can kill enemies, and you know, that's what a shooter does. Unfortunately, this game is a little bit of console-itis, and there's no way to turn aim assist off, even when you don't have a controller plugged in. If I'm using a mouse, aim assist actually kind of messes with me, because it feels like you're fighting the aim assist to shoot the enemies. But that's really it. This game is modern military shooter in feel. You've played this before, you know what to expect in that regard. Unfortunately, this game does get into a repetitive formula of the same thing over and over and over again. You'll have a fun part where you can walk at your own pace, shoot some enemies, shoot some aliens, then you get into a vehicle and drive for a little bit, which is kind of boring. Then you get back to walking down, shooting some enemies, then you get into an on a rail section, and then you get back to walking around shooting enemies. You get what I'm saying here. Their attempt at pacing just sort of is a formula: shoot enemies, drive. Shoot enemies, rail section. Shoot enemies, drive. And although I can definitely enjoy the shooting to an extent, the driving is not compelling in any way whatsoever, and on a rail segments are definitely never compelling. To make matters worse, this game loves to break up gameplay with defense turret segments, which thankfully never last too long, but still they're there. Regardless, the parts where you're walking around and shooting enemies at your own pace are pretty enjoyable. I do have a few very big complaints about this game though. Those two complaints are that A, this game is incredibly short, you'll beat it in around 4.5 hours at most, and B, there are nowhere near enough guns in this game. If your game is going for a modern military feel, you need to have more guns. Here's the entire roster. You have a Mark 23, your standard 45 ACP pistol. It feels okay to shoot, isn't really that bad. You have the M4, which this is the gun you were going to be using for 80% of the game. Again, it sounds fine, it has decent recoil for what it is. The reloading animations are a bit weird but smooth. Let me just talk about the reloading animations really quick. They don't make any sense. You have stacked magazines, so you'd figure you would rotate magazines, but you don't, mostly. The non-empty magazine completely drops both magazines, puts in a new one, and hits the bolt catch, even though you didn't empty the magazine. The empty reload simply swaps the right mag to the left mag, and doesn't hit the bolt catch. That's not how this works. But the animations are at least smooth, so that's that. Next up, you have the sniper variant of the XM8, which is a bit of an odd choice, but you know, that's fine, I like the XM8. The reloading animation on this one doesn't make any sense. He's not cocking anything. What is he cocking there? The cocking handle's on top. There's nothing there he's pulling. You have a standard rocket launcher. This does not stand out in any way whatsoever. It's just there for the random boss encounter. And then you have two futuristic weapons. One shotgun type thing, and then one grenade launcher type thing. That's it. That's all you got. 6 guns in total. Where's the SMG? Where's the shotgun? Where's everything? If you're a modern military shooter type game, you need to have more weapons. It definitely would have made the game better to have more weapons to experiment with, because without those more weapons, the game just kind of started feeling repetitive. And even though the game did occasionally throw in a boss battle, the boss battle never required you to do a whole lot more than just shoot a few rockets at it, and that's it. The closest thing this game has to a gimmick is the squad system, which really doesn't amount to anything. You can tell your squad mates to go to specific places and shoot them, but you'll never do this aside from telling them to open a few doors, which you're required to do to progress to the next area. You can affect the squad morale, but all this really does is make them shoot more accurately and throw a lot of grenades when it's high. Thankfully there's no friendly fire so it doesn't hurt you, but the way you increase squad morale is just by getting more headshots. Basically, it's far more effective just to do everything yourself and not bother. Especially since the AI are really dumb in this game on both sides, so just shoot everything. But there's not really anything more to talk about, and this might seem somewhat underwhelming, but this game is the textbook definition of a mediocre shooter. This game is definitely not as bad as everything on the internet would lead me to believe. I think the reviews are a product of its time. Keep in mind, this game came out in 2007 and we were completely oversaturated in modern military shooters. To be honest, I sort of miss this era. I don't miss all the games that wanted to be Call of Duty, but I at least miss the style of game. I miss the more grounded gunplay with guns that sound loud and punchy and have recoil, but aren't full-on simulations. Still, at the time we had plenty of these to choose from, and this one is nowhere near as good as the other ones that had come out. But that's also the second problem. 2007 was a really good year, and this came out right at the end of 2007. I mentioned this earlier, but 2007 saw the release of games like BioShock, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, The Orange Box, Crysis, Stalker, Shadow of Chernobyl, Halo 3, The Darkness, Medal of Honor Airborne, which is a very overlooked game I might cover in the future. I mean, you get my point. 2007 was an extremely strong year for shooters, and if you're going to play one of those games or this game, what are you gonna choose? You're gonna play the better ones. Still, I can't see it as a 4 out of 10. I wasn't hating myself when I was playing it. I never really got stuck for too long at any given moment in the game. The enemies weren't too difficult. The guns felt okay. This is literally a textbook mediocre shooter. The review scores make sense if you're paying full price for the game, but honestly I think it aged better than when it first came out, which is really odd to say. But really, that's all I have to say. It's a mediocre modern military shooter, and if you want to go play it, then go through the pain in the ass of trying to find this thing online. But that about sums up this video of Blacksite Area 51. Thank all of you that joined me over on Twitch while I streamed it. If you want to join me in a future stream, my Twitch is twitch.tv/Jarek4GamingDragon. Perhaps give a follow. If you want to help further, you can go subscribe to Twitch or go to my Patreon, patreon.com/Jarek4, or you can click the link in the bottom right. That will send you directly to my Patreon. Twitch subs and patrons get to see my videos one day ahead of time. But that sums up this video. Thank all of you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.